Kanika, I think it's showing 2 links now for some reason online.
It's working. So I tried on for my phone since I can't try it from my laptop. You'll go and see that it's on right now.
Kanika, I think it's.
So Joanna, you want to try it out on your phone? If you go to our Planning Commission website, you click on that Planning Commission website, and it should take us to the meeting right now.
I see 2. I'm on my same computer. I see 2 links, but let me try to close this out and go to my phone and try it there.
Yeah, try it on the phone.
Okay.
But it's working on my end. I see it's moving. So John, I think we can start at 6:30 whenever you're ready.
Okay.
Yep, I see it.
Okay, good evening. It's now 6:30, and I would like to call to order the regularly scheduled Planning Commission meeting of Tuesday, March 9th, 2021. As over the past several months, we are continuing to have our meeting in a virtual setting in order to ensure the health and safety of the public by limiting human contact that could spread the COVID-19 virus. So council chambers are closed, and planning commissioners, city attorneys, staff, council liaison are all participating in this meeting remotely. This meeting may be viewed live, and there's a link available to YouTube on the city's website under the Planning Commission heading. In an effort to best facilitate dialogue and discussion, I'll ask my fellow commissioners to be mindful of muting their microphones when not speaking, and I will call on commissioners to each speak on our one item tonight, one by one. And if you want to speak at a different time, please feel free to raise your hand and I will call upon you to speak. I thank everyone for their patience as we continue to proceed with our meeting in digital format. With that, let's do a roll call. So this evening we have Commissioner Barthacor, Commissioner Braun,
Here.
Commissioner and Secretary Dahl,
Present.
Vice Chair Padilla,
Present.
our council liaison and mayor Diana Mahmood,
Here.
and several members of planning staff, including Kanika Kith, Director Joanna Handkammer, and other support staff, Elizabeth Barr-El, our long range planner, and Andrew Jarrett as well. So with that, I will move on to approval of the agenda. It's a relatively short agenda with one public hearing item. So anyone want to move to approve the agenda?
Move to approve.
Commissioner Braun, do I have a second? I'll second. Oh, sorry. Who seconded?
I'll second it.
Okay, Vice Chair Padilla. We'll roll real quick. Commissioner Barthacor?
Yes.
Commissioner Braun?
Yes.
Commissioner Dahl?
Yes.
Vice Chair Padilla?
Yes.
And I am a yes as well. Moving on to the next item, any disclosure we didn't have site visits this time, but any ex parte communications or contacts regarding the hearing. I'll go in the same order. So Commissioner Barthacor,
No.
Commissioner Braun,
I did have someone, Gail Malton texted me today and asked me if we had considered the inclusionary housing ordinance, and I said we were considering it tonight, and if she was interested I directed her to the Planning Commission agenda and the website.
great. Commissioner Dahl,
Nothing to report.
Commissioner Padilla,
No communication.
and I had no communications as well. We did have one written public comment. Do we have any audio public comments?
Mr. Chair, we do have one audio comment, verbal comment for the general comment, and I will share that with you shortly here.
Okay.
And it has also been posted on the website.
Great.
Well, let me figure out my screen. There. Oops.
Joshua Bergson, general planning comment, general comment planning. I have included an email where I actually cite everything and include videos for this. I wanted to talk to you guys about some of the legal things that planning and the city attorney have told you is illegal, so that you could understand how the actions you guys might take today will affect the future. You remember the 1,000 ADUs that planning tried to claim, said it was totally legal? That, as I cited on page 31, is not allowed, and they now know it's not allowed. Objective design standards versus subjective design standards. Objective design standards are standards which are checkboxes, yes or no. You could read it and you know whether it is. Subjective requires interpretation. Liz Barrell had an entire essay talking about objective design standards and said that, hey, you need to submit a paragraph describing your historic context of your ADU. That's obviously an objective. Last week, City Attorney Teresa Highsmith tried to say that subjective design guidelines are legally binding if the objective design standards cite the subjective design guidelines. If an objective design standard cites a subjective design guidelines, it is no longer objective anymore. It is subjective. This kind of mental gymnastics to try to say, hey, we could apply subjective stuff instead of objective is the reason the city has 16 lawsuits against it. It is also illegal to backdate an ordinance. This is SB 330. You've had 2 presentations on it. I was hoping Teresa Highsmith would have to give you a presentation today where she would cover that part. I was shocked it was included in the inclusionary ordinance. You cannot backdate an IHO. You cannot apply it to stuff with applications in. You cannot count an inclusionary housing ordinance and density bonus to count for RNHA units and housing elements. There are YouTube videos of Liz and Joanna stating exactly this. Bottom of page 14, HCD memo. Analysis of appropriate zoning should not include implementation of an inclusionary housing program or potential increase due to a density bonus. It is specifically outlawed. The entire reason you have the highest IHO today is because they think this is allowed. It is not allowed. Lastly, if you adopt this IHO as stated, you have to decrease the realistic development capacity on the housing element. This means that every site you have will have a realistic development capacity of 20%. You guys will have to zone for a lot more. This will make it almost impossible for you guys to do a compliant housing element, and this is a choice. Well, I just assume planning hasn't read the site's memo because they ignore everything else. But this will vastly affect. Please look at my email. I'm out of time. Thank you so very much.
And Kanika, that's the one audio public comment. And I noticed that the Mr. Albrechtson's email is indeed on the website, and as are all the links that he cited.
Yes, Mr. Chair, that is our one audio verbal comment, and his written comment has already been posted on the website.
Chair Lisak, I
Yes.
think we were emailed another verbal comment. Kanika, was that too late? But I think because I listened to another one.
That may be for item number 1.
Oh, thank you. Okay.
But with that, I will close public comments and move on to item number 1, which is recommendation to adopt an inclusionary housing ordinance. And this is continued from the January 26th, 2021 meeting. Does staff have a presentation?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So again, our interim manager of long-range planning and economic development, Elizabeth Barrell, is here to give you the presentation, and we're all here to answer questions as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'm gonna, let's see if I can share my screen. Okay, I just need the permission to share my screen.
Liz, you should be able to share
Okay,
now.
I got it. Great, thank you. All right. Okay, thank
Liz,
you.
Liz,
And-
just real quick.
Yeah.
I think you have it in notes instead of in full
Are
screen.
you not seeing?
Yep,
I just
now
went
you
to
show
full
my
screen.
email.
Ah, okay, hold on. Let me unshare and reshare. Sorry about that. I have too many screens. Looks like it shared screen 1 instead of screen 2. Are we looking at the front page in slideshow mode now?
Yes, now it's working.
Okay. Sorry for that, everyone. And good evening. And it's great to be back again with you this evening to continue the hearing on the draft inclusionary housing ordinance. And hold on, rearrange things here. Okay. And I'm gonna repeat a little bit just to help those who might be watching to see what we're here for this evening. So the inclusionary housing ordinance adds a chapter to the zoning ordinance requiring housing projects to include a percentage of affordable units to be deed restricted for a period of time for occupancy by households at eligible income levels based on LA County income criteria. So this is the core purpose for adopting an inclusionary housing ordinance for new developments to include affordable units so that the city will begin to grow an inventory of affordable housing together with units that may be constructed through 100% affordable housing projects. As I stated at the opening hearing on January 26th, this ordinance is a key strategy for the upcoming housing element in order to plan for compliance with the city's Regional Housing Needs Assessment, or RHNA. As such, the action we're asking you to take tonight will be a significant step in responding to a housing shortage that affects our community, including our frontline essential workers and our next generation struggling in the local economy with a high cost of housing. As a quick refresher on who the inclusionary housing is intended to serve, here are the income levels which are calculated with reference to the area median income, or AMI. The maximum income to qualify for eligibility to rent an affordable unit changes annually, as do the maximum rents. As an example, the slide here shows the current maximum monthly rent for a 1-bedroom unit. There's more detail on the additional document that was sent to commissioners and posted on the agenda webpage today about all of the different permutations of levels and income and rent levels. That document, by the way, comes from LA County, and the same calculations are applicable to South Pasadena as part of the LA region. But also, to clarify a question that came up last time, I just wanted to note that LA County's inclusionary ordinance applies only to unincorporated areas of the county It does not apply to incorporated cities like South Pasadena, which is why we are here this evening adopting our own inclusionary or recommending adoption of our own inclusionary housing ordinance. So 6 weeks ago, the Planning Commission held a special meeting and began its discussion on the inclusionary housing ordinance. You held a great discussion and you brought up some very important issues that required further development. And as you saw in the staff report for this hearing, and we'll see in this presentation, we've used the intervening time to produce a much better proposal. We did this with the help of the Commission's subcommittee, and we really want to thank Commissioners Dahl and Padilla for the very thoughtful and helpful ideas that they've contributed, and for taking the time to meet with us 4 times in the last 6 weeks to move this policy document forward as quickly as it is. In those meetings, they were also very careful to bring up all of your concerns that were expressed at the first hearing to address and resolve. And before presenting to you a review of the substantive changes in the ordinance, the next few slides are a review of the Commissioner's concerns and comments expressed at that meeting. We discussed applicability of this ordinance, which projects would be exempt from its provisions. There were concerns about the effective date, which was proposed to reach back to the beginning of this calendar year. Although commissioners have often expressed that they don't want to see another large project with no affordable housing, there's also concern about whether there were pipeline projects for which this could be a hardship. Commissioners also asked to exclude DA projects from being exempt from the ordinance. Commissioners generally expressed support for a requirement on the higher end of the range required by other California cities, asking to see additional comparison data, which was included in the staff report. The primary concern was the requirement's complexity. Additionally, commissioners asked staff to reconsider the appropriateness of allowing an in lieu fee alternative for more projects than were being proposed to be allowed, which was only for 3-unit projects. The section that seemed to cause the most confusion was the design incentives, which are proposed to offer incentives to large projects for a higher level of architectural development in exchange for guaranteed state density bonus incentives. As you saw in the staff report, and I will present in a moment, this section has been significantly rethought based on your discussion and direction, and again, great input from the subcommittee. And lastly, commissioners asked staff to look at the ordinance in light of how other cities are approaching inclusionary housing and learn more about how similar provisions to those being recommended are working for them in other cities. So as I go through the following slides to summarize the changes, and again, just the substantive changes, not every detail that are recommended in this ordinance, each slide will give the code subsection number. So you can follow along either in the draft ordinance in attachment A or in the red line attachment to the staff report. So in response to the concern about project exemptions, it is now proposed that applications that are deemed complete on or before the effective date of the ordinance will be exempt from its provisions. Although not explicitly in the ordinance, applications submitted under SB 330 are subject to the laws that are in place, state laws, and are based on the day that the application is submitted. The laws that are in place on the day the application, a compliant application, is received by the city, that is the date that those projects will be subject to, and not they will not be subject to the inclusionary ordinance if they come in prior to the effective date of the ordinance. Staff is recommending that the ordinance be be adopted by urgency and through the regular process, so that the effective date will be the date of council's first reading on the ordinance, thereby avoiding the advent of a rush of applications during the following 45 days. And the DA project exemption was removed as requested by the commission. In subsection 050, the simplified calculation of required units will require 20% of the base number of project units. And that will be across the board ownership projects and rental projects. The state density bonus is also calculated on the base number of units in the project. And this is a change from the previously proposed, which based it on the entire number of units in the project, including density bonus units. So some of the public comments you received have stated their disagreement, as this calculation will result in a smaller number of units. At the same time, you've also received comments from the opposing perspective, concerned that 20% is too high. Staff is proposing the change to the base number of units because most other cities base their calculations on the pre-bonus number of project units. In fact, Pasadena, which was used as a model for some aspects of this ordinance, including this one, actually just changed their code last month and clarified that the requirement is based on the base number of units in the project and not on the total number. The project planner from Pasadena, who wrote up their report and their inclusionary ordinance, provided me with some really great insight into what they've learned over the past year, including the success of the increased requirement to 20%. And I discussed that a little bit in the staff report. They've had 1 year to look and see what kind of impact it had for them to go from the 15% to the 20%. It's been very successful, and clearly the market will bear that that change at that level. And we believe South Pasadena's market will as well. Following further research and discussion with the Santa Monica Housing Division about the challenges of affordable ownership units, we've rethought the ordinance in terms of providing affordable ownership units, and are proposing 2 revisions. One allowing the in lieu fee as an option, and the other requiring ownership fees to be moderate if provided on site. And this is based on the high degree of challenge for lower income households to actually purchase their units. If you have more questions, I'm happy to provide more about that discussion after this presentation. And also, as I mentioned, the very helpful Commission Subcommittee, and I want to thank Commissioner Dahl for her question earlier today, because the subcommittee's work never ends. And today she asked about the language in section A1 of this subsection, which might be confusing, and we agreed. The clauses was included to address the situation of replacement of existing inclusionary units and make sure that those were also provided in any replacement project. In response to Commissioner Dahl's question, we suggest adding the words in red to clarify that an affordable unit, where it says or otherwise identified through a discretionary, otherwise identified as an affordable unit, to clarify that it's otherwise identified through a discretionary approval process as an affordable unit. And this is to make sure that the intent is not that a unit that has a low rent is suddenly considered affordable if there's no requirement for that rent. But we did want to have a catch-all phrase that if there, for some reason, is not a covenant, but there was a requirement by a permit, that it's not a loophole for losing that unit. So as mentioned in a previous slide, it is proposed to allow the in lieu fee to apply to 3 or 4 unit projects now, as well as any ownership project. This is proposed for more equitable treatment of 4-unit projects and because administration of ownership units is so highly problematic, as I mentioned. Along with this is the addition of language that requires a high in lieu fee equivalent to the cost of providing a unit. And so I'm taking this section a little bit out of order. This is actually section 110, if you're following along in the ordinance. And we're proposing a change to this section to specify the way that the fee needs to be set at a rate that encourages developers to build the unit on site. In other words, that the fee needs to be adopted to be equivalent to the cost of providing a comparable unit. And in addition, until the fee resolution is adopted, we're proposing a process to set the fee for each project. So this is based on a process that's used by other cities that have not established a fee through resolution. And we do not recommend using this as a long-term solution, that we do think there should be a fee resolution and an in lieu fee should be set. But in the meantime, if projects come along before that resolution is set, the Planning Commission will be able to approve the fee based on the comparable unit cost and the information the applicant would provide. Again, to make this a public and transparent process with the Planning Commission's approval. Oops, okay. A couple of small changes are proposed in section 070. We suggest removing a minimum unit size, which is based on the number of bedrooms, and just leaving it more general, comparable to a project's market rate units. And also to add some more specific marketing requirements to make sure that the developer is marketing the affordable units. And we're also proposing to include preference to South Pasadena residents and employees for those units, to occupy those units. So section 080, going back to this, has been redesigned and now provides an opportunity for all projects to opt to provide consistent architectural design, and the term we use in the ordinance is 360-degree design, which is described to explain what that means and is implemented through objective standards that are also flexible. So the proposal is to allow all projects to propose to provide those that level of architectural design in exchange for more certainty in the density bonus process. So I'm not going to present all the details of this section. You've had a chance to look at it in the staff report, and we can definitely address any questions that you have after the presentation. Balancing state law with the city's high value on architecture and design can be tricky. And it's important to understand also that the state has not prohibited cities from enforcing existing design guidelines. There is still design review. It's still very much part of the city's process. However, new requirements and the requirements proposed in this ordinance do need to be objective based on state law. And this is what the section has now strived to create, using these as an incentive to ease the process of requesting a state density bonus. And a small correction, and this one, thanks to some input from Commissioner Padilla, that she's pointed out an inconsistency in this section as we rewrote it, and we are going to propose that the reference in B2, which references the R4 residential district that the section is applicable to, should have been changed to multifamily residential districts. And that would be consistent with other language later on in this section. So we'd like to just incorporate this little change into staff's recommendation for the ordinance. And as you can see here, so this is our recommendation, just copied right from the staff report. And we would like to incorporate these changes to section 050A and to section 080A. And before I finish, let me just quickly tell you what our planned next steps are for this process. Should the Planning Commission recommend adoption to council, we are tentatively scheduled for the April 7th council meeting, in which the urgency ordinance and first reading would both be brought to the council. The second reading for the regular ordinance process then would be April 21st. And staff would at that point start preparing updated application materials and start the process of the in lieu fee resolution. So that date is to be determined. And so I will leave you with the recommendation slide. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Do we have any questions for staff based on the presentation? I'll go around. The order of commissioners on my Zoom meeting keeps changing, so I've changed the order in which I asked. Commissioner Padilla, do you have any questions?
I do not. Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Brown.
I do have a few questions. First of all, I want to applaud the subcommittee and staff for this this new proposal tonight. I think there's a lot of really great revisions in here and making it a much more sort of understandable. And I think you guys worked really hard and done a really good job. I still have a few issues that we'll discuss later, but I have a few questions. I just want to understand, so if they're owned units, this housing ordinance would only require the percentage deemed, the 20% to be moderate income. Is that correct? So if you're building a 20 unit house, if you're building a 20 unit building, so 4 of them have to be affordable, but at the moderate income level.
Correct, 20% of the units. And also, and this isn't a change from the ordinance, so I didn't present it just now, but an ownership project has the option to provide rental units, in which case they would need to be at the affordability levels that other rental projects provide.
Okay, so you can either provide the 4 units at the moderate income level, or you can alternatively provide rental housing. And
Right.
I've forgotten, is that the housing that's 1,500 feet away or another site, or does it have to be on? I've now forgotten that.
Right, that this is the on-site requirement, and what you're referring to is that there are some alternatives, and one alternative is to provide off-site units if you can't provide them on-site, and that's within 1,500 feet.
And that's for the owned units and the rental units.
That's for any off-site provision, alternative provision.
And on the owned units, I'm sorry, I now can't remember. So if you're building owned units, you have the option for the in lieu fee.
Right, if you are if it's an ownership project and they don't want to provide the on-site, they can provide, they can pay an in lieu fee that is being proposed as an option.
Okay, and then when I asked about the in lieu fee, and I know that it's to be set by city council, and before then it's going to be determined by the planning commission, but do you have any sense of what that fee equates to? You know, what are other cities charging as an in lieu fee? Is it a broad range? Is it, do you have a sense for that?
There is a broad range that cities are requiring right now, and that was if there was an attachment in the staff report that gave a few of those. I think it gave about 8 or 10 other cities.
Okay, is that on this chart?
Yeah.
Okay.
So the in lieu fee can be as high as much as it costs to actually provide the unit. Some cities opt, they do the research and they find, you know, how much it costs, and then they opt to lower it, for reasons that they choose to lower it. So
Oh,
you-
I see. So for example, like Santa Monica, for an ownership unit, it's $41.70 per square foot for the in lieu fee.
right. And so that could typically in a project come to somewhere around $500,000. But the idea in our proposal is that the in lieu fee would be set in a way, whichever mechanism is used, would be set in a way that requires the developer to pay an equivalent amount to what it would require to provide the unit on site, so that there's actually funds put into the affordable housing fund to build a unit.
Okay, and so for
That does
example,
incentivize on-site.
yeah, I gotcha. So for example, I just like to use concrete numbers because it helps me understand exactly what that means. So I think our Mission Bell project was about 40 units. Is that right? Somewhere around there. Yeah, 40 units. I see Joanna.
36 units.
36 units.
Uh-huh.
So that project at 20%, right, that's 7.2. So is that, do we round up or down? I've forgotten, but it's about 7 units. Right? So it,
Okay.
so 7 units would have to have been affordable. Okay. So they have 29 that they can sell and then 7 units. Okay. And the in lieu fee, if they didn't want the 7 units, would be whatever we decide it is. If it's the Santa Monica version, it'd be 500,000 per. So it'd be 3.5 million under the Santa Monica version.
Well, yeah, and then a number that we have heard for the costs, just general, and really, I throw it out there. It's a number that was provided in the SCAG report. It could change all the time, but that the cost of providing a unit is somewhere around $450,000 to $500,000 a unit. So
Okay. I'm just trying to sort of make it relative to us in a real life situation.
Yeah.
So, okay, I've got that. Now, can I just ask you about rented units? And the rented units, the 20% must, if it's just 10 units, then it can be at moderate or any moderate, low, or very low, right?
if the project is 10 units.
4 to 10 units.
Yeah. So if it's 1 unit, it could be any level. If it's 2 units or more, so basically if it's over 5 units, the 20% is going to be more than 1. So it rounds up, which would mean 2 units. And if 2 units are being provided, the proposal is that either they're both low income or one is very low and the other could be any, whatever.
So if you're building a 5-unit rental housing, you have to do 2 that are affordable, 2 of the 5.
1. 5
Oh,
would be 1.
5 would be 1.
Right,
So
20%.
So 1, and it would have to be low or extremely low, or I'm sorry, or low or very low, low or very low.
So they would have to provide 1, and that unit could be at any affordability level as proposed. So it could be
Okay.
moderate. But if they have to provide 2 or more, then it's either too low or a very low balanced by whatever other level the
So if
developer
you're building
chooses.
so you have a 10 unit, you're building 20% is 2. So in that case, we mandate one of the 2 has to be very low and one has to be low.
No, one of the 2 has to be very low and the other could be anything you want, or they can both be low, not very low, but both of them be low.
Okay.
So 2 lows
Okay.
or a very low with another balanced.
Because I'm just kind
They
of
could be
looking at what
both
those
very
rents are, right? So if they're very
Right.
low for a 2-bedroom, it's $870 a month. If it's low, it's $1,044 a month for a 2-bedroom. Okay.
Right.
I'm again just trying to sort of conceptualize and make it real, okay, for me. Okay, and then I know you clarified the existing affordable. It's sort of determined by somebody that there's an existing affordable. So out there now, there are lots of apartments and other units. And so the process for determining what's out there now will be through some discretionary process.
I I
Or
think
does the new ordinance only apply to anything in the next 55 years that's gone through this process?
the new ordinance will apply to new projects, but if a project is proposed at a location where the previous discretionary permit said that you need to provide some affordable units for whatever reason, if they provided it in order to get some incentive of some sort. There
Okay.
may not be a lot of units like that out there in South
Okay.
Pasadena, but this is just to make sure that none are lost.
Okay, so in prior laws, some were required, and so there might be some hanging out there somewhere.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. And my other question, the preference for South Pass residents and employees, and I don't necessarily disagree with that, but my question just was like, is that constitutional? I mean, or
Is it allowable?
Is that legally allowed to be? How are we, practically speaking, if so, how are we going to go about that application process? And you don't have to answer that necessarily, but it's sort of just raises a couple of, I'm just not sure, like, great idea. How do we do that?
Yeah, and I will answer that we've checked this with the city attorney that it is allowable for the city to require this, and the process needs to be developed.
Okay. Okay, and then design, and we haven't listened to the public comment, but I did listen to it. And that was one of my questions, is the design, on an apartment that you might be renting for, whatever, $870 for a 2-bedroom. Do you really have to put in the like high-end appliances and the marble countertop, those kinds of things? And I just wondered about, I'm not necessarily sure where I stand on that issue, but that's what our ordinance would require, correct? But the same design features throughout the building, regardless of whether it's one of the affordable units or just a standard unit.
It has to be roughly equivalent. I don't think
we intended it to be exact for exact.
Yeah.
An exact match. I think that there was an understanding to be relatively equivalent. So perhaps, all the same amenities.
Okay.
And I believe that there was also some, maybe even an allowance of a square footage, 10% perhaps smaller. So it's
with
not
the density bonus.
It's not identical.
Okay.
Right. So there's a little bit of flexibility there. Yes.
Yeah, and have a look at in 070, have a look at section D, which gives a couple of exceptions for that to assure feasibility.
Okay, I will look at that. So those are my questions, and I do want to really thank Commissioners Padilla and Dahl and staff for all this hard work. I know this is a lot, but I think it's really important that we get this right, and there's a lot of opinions on this all over the place. So excuse all my questions, but I think it's very important. Thank you for all your time.
Thank you, Commissioner Braun. Commissioner Barthcord, do you have any questions?
Thank you, Chair. Thanks again, Liz and Joanna and the subcommittee. This is a lot of work since we saw this the last time, and clearly a lot of the issues that were raised during the last meeting have been addressed. Definitely the issues that I had raised have been addressed. One was about the policy not being regressive beyond a project of a certain size, which seems to have been addressed, as well as the challenge of delivering ownership inclusionary units. I think you've given some great examples where those challenges exist and seems to be addressed. I was curious about a couple of things. The application of the 20% to base units as opposed to total units. Is that sort of becoming the norm, or is it also kind of all over the place? I was particularly curious because you mentioned Pasadena had, in fact, did not lose any units when they saw that when they increased their ratio to 20%. but are now actually changing it back to base units, not total units. Why are they doing that if they saw success?
You know, I hesitate to speak for them and for all of their reasons, but a couple of things. One is that there was a great deal of confusion about it, and the state density bonus, as you know, is based on the number of projects, the base project, and there was a lot of confusion, kind of the moving target of, you know, if you keep adding, does that mean you keep raising your inclusionary requirement, and how do you calculate? So there were difficulties with that, but I think at some point that they interpreted it differently and then changed the ordinance to clarify, because I think it was quite problematic is what I understand. And then it turned out, as I looked at others, that I didn't see any other ordinance that did base it on the full amount, including the density bonus. So.
And my second question is, can you explain to me a little bit on like the proposed mechanism of an in lieu fee prior to an in lieu fee actually adopted?
So the applicant, let's say the applicant was proposing 20 ownership units and needed to provide 4 on-site units, and they would have to provide information to staff about the economics of the project, the financials of the project, and then they would also, our thinking is we would set this up, require a fee for them to pay, that the city would have to also review that. So we wouldn't just take what the developer says, and that we would have an impartial source review the financials to confirm that they're accurate, which would be on the developer to pay a fee for that service. And based on that, we would bring it to the Planning Commission and recommend a fee. And that's how we would see that working. And as you can see, this, after 1 or 2 of these, if the commission might start to have an idea of what the right fee level ought to be. But it is it's a hardship on the applicant. So it's not a great long-term solution. That's why we still recommend a fee resolution, but it provides a mechanism so that you don't have an applicant just waiting on their project for the resolution.
Those are my questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And thank you for all your help too.
Thank you, Commissioner Berthacor. Commissioner Dahl.
I just have one question following up on Commissioner Barthacor. Obviously determining the inclusionary in lieu fee on a case-by-case basis is not the optimum way to do it. Do we have an idea of what the timeline is to get to the council with a recommended fee for the inclusionary fee?
So this is Joanna. You know, as part of our discussion for and consideration for city council, you know, we want to prepare them and inform them that, you know, such a study has a budget implication to that. So we'll introduce that and we'll seek some guidance from the city council regarding, you know, approval of a budget and a time frame to come back with an in lieu fee for resolution.
Okay.
But it is something that we will present to them as the context of their consideration when we go to the next step, if Planning Commission is ready to send this to the City Council.
Okay, that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Dahl. And my questions have been asked by other. Oh, Vice Chair Padilla, did I get you?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, actually, I did have one question. It came up as as the other commissioners were speaking, but do you want to go next, Chair Lisa?
No, my questions have been asked,
Okay.
so feel free.
Can I ask, I mean, I know the in lieu is not preferred, but in the case where in lieu is used, smaller projects, is the San Gabriel Valley Housing Trust arrangement already in place with the city? So that mechanism isn't a delay for realizing any units that are using the in lieu option? Or is that another step that has to be formalized? I think the city already has an arrangement, is that correct?
But yeah, so the city is already part of the San Gabriel Valley Regional Housing Trust. So we're a member, and there is an annual fee to be a member. So we've already established that. And what this inclusionary policy does is it says that those inclusionary dollars will stay with the city until the city council makes an action of whether or not they send that to the Regional Housing Trust. They may want to do that. They may want to, explore other ways in which, but the intent of those dollars is obviously to facilitate affordable housing production in South Pasadena.
Great.
So, but we are interested in the potential of the San Gabriel Valley Regional Housing Trust because of their ability to leverage these dollars, local dollars, and bring in state and potentially federal dollars as well.
Great. Okay. Thank you, Joanna and Liz.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So if you're going into discussion, I'm going to stop share here so that.
I wanted to bring forward public comments.
Okay.
I believe we have an audio comment, and then there are 3 written comments that are available on the website.
Mr. Chair, we have 2 audio comments and I will play
Okay.
them for
Thank you.
Dr. Joshua Braxton, item number 1, Planning Commission. Just want to review the bottom of page 14 of the HCD Housing Elements Memo. The analysis of appropriate zoning should not include build-out projections from an implementation of a jurisdiction's inclusionary program. No matter how much planning wants the inclusionary housing ordinance to count for their RHNA, it is specifically outlawed. Bottom of page 14. For the definitions of income categories, it's based on the area median income. Extremely low income is 30% of AMI or less. Very low income is 50% of AMI or less. Lower income is 80% AMI or less. Moderate income is 120% AMI or less. Please refer to the Alhambra research about the different local inclusionary housing ordinances. When they don't specify a specific number, they're talking about low income on that sheet. Planning presented you with the inclusionary housing ordinance that is the highest affordability in the history of California. It's higher than San Francisco, higher than Cupertino, literally higher than every city you will see on the Alhambra research. They're presenting 10% low income and 10% very low income. Look at Alhambra See if you can find a single city that's a 20% inclusionary housing ordinance, which is half 80% income and half 50% income. It doesn't exist. At the community meetings last year, the community decided they wanted a 15% low-income inclusionary housing ordinance. Planning changed that. They decided they wanted 10% low-income and 10% very low-income on 50 units at the last meeting. This meeting, they are saying 10% low and 10% very low on 10 units. Every meeting is getting higher and higher affordability. They obviously didn't listen to Commissioners Bronze and Berthacourt, comments at the last meeting. They say they don't want to miss out on affordable units. If you set the affordability so high, you don't get a single unit because nothing is financially able to be built. And with this IHO, nothing is financially able to be built. So let's look at the local cities. Pomona, 13% moderate income, and they actually have a phase-in over the summer. Alhambra, who did the research that they're presenting to you and is our neighbor, they decided a 9% low income and a 6% moderate income is appropriate for this market. Not 10% low and 10% very low, 9% low and 6% moderate. Culver City, 15% low income. San Francisco, the most expensive housing market in California, has a 10% very low, 4% low, and 4% moderate. That's lower than South Pasadena. And planning has no idea what this IHO will do to the realistic development capacity as required for you to do for your housing element. This will mean that all of your sites will.
This comment is for the Planning Commission tonight. It's item number 1, inclusionary housing ordinance. My name is Gail Malton. I live at 2056 Fletcher Avenue. My feeling about the inclusionary housing ordinance as you have it written is that it is far too draconian and it is far more stringent and difficult for developers than our neighbors. I think we should be looking at what Culver City is doing, what West Covina is doing. Comparing us to West Hollywood, Santa Monica, or San Francisco is unrealistic. These are highly, highly desirable areas, very special areas. We are a nice little small town. We're not that special, but we need housing to be built. And with these requirements, I think you will dissuade any developer from developing or improving rental multifamily housing. The item number 050A1 about replacement units, that any existing, any demoed unit would have to be replaced at the same affordable level, pretty much ensures that aging, obsolete buildings, such as some of the ones on Raymond Hill, will never be replaced, and you're legislating future blight. On the ownership units, item number C, where you're saying inclusionary ownership units shall be moderate income, pretty much ensures that any developer who comes in here will simply build condos and not additional apartments. Apartments are badly needed. And on the last item, I would say on several places you've mentioned that the low-income units need to have the same basic quality interiors as the market-level ones. So what you're saying here is if it's a luxury unit, a luxury complex, that low-income units are going to have to be equipped with Viking stoves, French oak floors, marble bathrooms. I think that's unreasonable. It's not needed or expected by anyone, but will be one more thing that will dissuade any developer from coming to South Pasadena. We're not that special a place to them, and they can build elsewhere. I think we should look at just a normal inclusionary housing ordinance as you find other places in the state, 15%, whatever. Look at what Culver City is doing. Look at what West Covina is doing. Don't just look at these fancy places that are highly, highly desirable. Anyway, that's pretty much all I have to say. And I.
Mr. Chair, that's the last of the public comment.
Okay, thank you. And then the 3 written comments that we received, one was from Doug Smith with Public Counsel. One was from the South Pasadena Tenants Union, has multiple signatures. And then one was from Josh Ulbrichson. And those are available for the public to see on the city's website under Planning Commission. So with that, I will close the public hearing and move on to commissioner discussion. Do I have anyone who would like to go first? Well, I will start with our subcommittee members, I think. So Commissioner Dahl.
Thank you. I'm in support of this ordinance as it's written. I just wanted to explain why I support the calculating on the base rather than the density bonus. One, I think it's simpler. The density bonus could allow quite a large increase of number of units in the project, and I'm concerned that requiring the inclusionary units on top of that number is too stringent of a requirement, and I concur with staff that it's sort of a middle ground to calculate the number of inclusionary units on the base, not on the larger number of units. And with that, those are my comments. I'm prepared to support the recommendation with the couple of amendments that staff has proposed.
Thank you, Commissioner Dahl. Vice Chair Padilla.
I wanted to start by saying the prior meeting where we had this topic, as you know, I was advocating we move quickly. Time is of the essence. And I must say, having participated on the subcommittee, I think the extra time we took was really important. I mean, I think everybody has to judge that in their own way, if that was the case. But from my own perspective, I was really glad that the commission, and my fellow colleagues agreed we did need more time. And I think, I think, like Commissioner Dahl, the issue of the 20% and where it's taken, I understand the comments and the desire to sort of maximize what we could obtain. We do want to see new projects coming in and a good base of affordable units. I think we're also asking for a lot of other things in terms of design. So I guess my gut sense is that we are trying to strike a balance of increasing our affordable housing units, having more housing units built in the city, but we have also kind of layered on these incentives to achieve certain things that we want to achieve. So I think it's sort of a balancing act. So I too am comfortable with the 20% on the base, because it could be revisited later if City Council, Planning Commission felt we needed to revisit it. I mean, I think that option is always there, but I'm comfortable with the way it's written. And then I'm excited about the preference for the local applicants for the affordable units. I mean, that feels really good. And for the on-site, realization of the units, that there's a clear preference for that. So yeah, I think I'll leave it at that. I'm really curious what our other three fellow commissioners are thinking. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Commissioner Barthacourt, turn it over to you.
Again, I'm quite supportive with the changes, and my question on the base versus sort of gross was more to understand, and I, as I had mentioned in the previous meeting as well, I mean, typically the way to do it absolutely right would be to back this up with some sort of financial analysis of what exactly works. But in the absence of that, I think we've done a pretty good job in calibrating it based on what nearby markets are doing, what's worked and what's not worked. And it may serve us well to, err on the side of something that'll work than that'll not work. And then we can calibrate it as we go along. And I would still encourage council to consider, designing an in-lieu fee that actually works, and perhaps calibrating this, if we can find the resources, with some more rigorous look at the different product types that may be possible out here. But I think in terms of general principles, and sort of the ideas that the policy is intending, I'm quite supportive, and it seems at least sets a good baseline for us to start working from.
Thank you. Any further comment? No. Commissioner Braun.
Well, again, I want to thank everyone for the hard work on this. I think we're getting closer, but I think personally, in looking at the chart of Southern California cities and the threshold that they've set, and in most of these cities, if I look at you know, and most of them are Orange County cities, but Irvine, 15%, Huntington Beach, 10%, Brea, 10%, which is where I work. You know, San Diego, 20 to 15%. San Juan Capistrano, 10%. Santa Ana, 15%. So I see the only 20% in this one chart that I am looking at, I'm 151, are West Hollywood and Pasadena. And I think I understand we're next to Pasadena, but I think we're a very different city than Pasadena in a lot of ways. I mean, they're bigger, there's more there to develop. So I'm a little I'm very uncomfortable with 20%. I'm also persuaded by the argument. And when I was putting numbers to actual development projects, I just think 20% is going to chase developers away. So I just don't think that's a threshold that I think will actually encourage more housing. I think it might discourage more housing. I could live with 15%. And the other thing is, I don't really, I think the idea of mandating the very low and the low, I'm not in favor of that. I would say, and it seems like most, or well, I shouldn't say most, I haven't counted them, but many cities do have different ways of addressing that, or it has to be among the moderate, low, and very low. And when I look at the chart for the income levels, what's interesting is the low income and the moderate income are very close. So for example, a 4-person low income family is 90,100. A 4-person moderate income family is 92,750. But the very low income is 56,300 for a 4-person family. So again, I'm concerned about chilling development in South Pasadena. I think a lot of developers already think it's hard to develop projects here. So I think we might be doing the opposite of what we're trying to encourage. So those are really the two specific things. I like the idea of the South Pasadena preference. I guess the two issues I still have are sort of mandating the very low and low as the income levels. And I think that 20% I just would be more comfortable at 15.
Okay. My general, first a general comment. So I agree with thanking everyone for the hard work. It's funny how sometimes a good edit really can improve something. And I feel like the ordinance as it stands now is far superior to the one that we looked at back in January. It's much easier to understand. It's simpler. To me, it makes a lot of sense. The design provisions are not as prescriptive, but easily understood. So I think the subcommittee and staff are really kind of working on those things. And I like just having the kind of single percentage applied across all projects. I also wanted to emphasize that our city municipal code and kind of zoning laws really should be dynamic and not static. So I do look at this as a starting point, and I think that we should be, kind of monitoring things and be making and fine tuning things as time goes on, if they're working or not working, in order to, provide the best outcome for the city as a whole. So I do think we shouldn't be thinking of this as we're gonna pass this and that's gonna be it for the next 50 years. I think we should be fine tuning it really almost every 2 years until we get a handle on how effective it is. So I've always leaned towards having a higher percentages. I like the idea of starting at 20, and I like the idea of encouraging the lower income because I know it's necessary. There's a need for it. And I'm not sure that the market without these metrics in place is going to provide that housing in and of itself. But I understand Commissioner Braun's comments and what we've been hearing from the public. So I would like to just canvass commissioners about how they would feel in a reduced percent, in reducing the percentage. I think fairly careful thought went into the 20% and the split, but is there anybody who would like to comment on that specific issue? Yes, Commissioner Padilla.
I love our commission because having such different minds and perspectives, I think, is really valuable for honing as a group sort of where things go. Especially when we're not all, we're coming from very different places. I think a couple of things it makes me think about is that it feels like we are making up for a huge loss of time where we didn't have an inclusionary housing ordinance. So, part of it is, it makes me think it's been a while, I know, since this topic has been discussed, and there've been a lot of projects just in the last year or so that we approved that had, there was one project that had units, the rest didn't. In terms of the percentage, it's interesting, and this is an argument taken from one of the public comments. If you assume the state density bonus is going to be applied, which I think is going to be very attractive to many developers, with the base, your total overall isn't at the 20%. It's, the 20% is on the base as written, so it is a modified. So it would be closer to a 15% potential effective total if it's a state density bonus project. So, there's lots of ways to look at it, but I don't know if that helps. It's another way to conceive of it, because there's both the base and the additional 35% that I'm pretty sure most developers are going to. I don't know. I'm not part of the development community, but I'd have to say that's probably pretty attractive for them developing on a site, what they can get on a return. So I would just say it's a little bit of, can we look backwards as we look forward? Can we look up for what we haven't done and see if we can make it up, knowing we can adjust in time? That's kind of a question I wanted to put out there, and to see what happens, because we have nothing to lose and everything to gain. So I think those are just a few thoughts. Thank you, Chair Lisa.
Thank you. Any other thoughts?
If I may just add, Chair Lisak, I think Commissioner Braun makes a good point on sort of looking at sort of where the other cities are. I tried to do that as well. It's really hard, at least for me, to figure out like what is the exact tipping point of this policy without looking at actual numbers of like what makes a project feasible, where this project is. The fact that it is working in Pasadena, which I think we're quite different cities, but I think our rent numbers are comparable, if not higher, out here for a new product. I think the only difference there is, can a developer or a particular development, based on the available development sites in South Pasadena and the existing sort of regulatory differences, like a building height restriction, can they take advantage of the full density bonus capacity to deliver the additional units that we're asking for? And I think that's something that I don't know and I can't say offhand. My assumption here is that, it's going to be somewhere at that sort of borderline, but I'm not 100% sure. And that's what makes a project in Pasadena different from a project in South Pasadena, where they may not have a height restriction and may actually develop at a higher density, taking advantage of the full density bonus. But I mean, with the rent differential and out here and out there, it's somewhere in the borderline, but we can't say for sure, which is why I was leaning towards the same thing, that even with some adjustment, even if they are not able to take full advantage of the density bonus, since we're applying this to the base, it provides some buffer for the developer to accommodate what we're asking for in terms of inclusionary units. I think it would be much more challenging if we were applying it to the gross units. But without the actual analytics, it's kind of hard to say what exactly works, right?
That's correct. And we do have, only a limited amount of sites where you can really do large development projects. There just aren't that many. So I think your point is well taken about the actual analytics. Any further discussion? Then I wanted to touch upon I wanted to see if anybody had any further comment on the low income requirements in the ordinance.
Maybe it's a question, Chair Lisak, if I can, and maybe it's not one any of us can answer, but just with everything that's happened this past year and the financial hit so many families are taking, it's like you may have been in one category a year ago and you could have quickly slipped into the next category. It's I think it's very hard looking at these numbers, but I think there are probably more people in certain categories that weren't there a year ago. It makes me wonder. I think the needs are only greater now. I would lean towards making sure we accommodate all of the levels, and especially at the lower end. That was all.
And then I had a question for, any further comment on the requirements of the lower income? Okay. I did want to make sure I understood the local provision. The provision is to market to local residents, correct? That's beyond, that's kind of the extent of it. It's that the marketing plan would have a focus on local people as far as rental. Am I correct in that?
Well, yes, and also it would give preference. So if you have a system where, someone on a waiting list is getting points based on whatever they're getting points based on, they might also get a point based on local, that they are either currently living in the city or employed within the city. So it would be a little more than just the marketing.
Okay, thank you. I think that's, I'm really pleased to see that. That was a great add. Any further discussion on this item? Seeing none, I am going to, sorry, I'm looking for the right page. So I am going to go ahead and make the motion that the Planning Commission recommends that the city adopt the ordinance adding Division 36.375 inclusionary housing to Chapter 36, which is the zoning chapter of the South Pasadena Municipal Code, as presented within the resolution, which is attachment 1 to our agenda. So do I have a second?
I'll second, but also staff presented 2 amendments in the presentation tonight, so I would add those amendments be added.
Okay, I will accept the amendment and as amended. So there's a motion and a second. Do we have further discussion on this item? Okay, seeing none, I will go ahead and take the roll. So, sorry, I'm following my screen. So Vice Chair Padilla,
Aye.
Commissioner Braun,
No, and I just wanted to say my 2 objections are the 20% and the rental unit 20% must be in the low and very low and doesn't include the moderate. I just want to, everything else would be okay, but no.
understood. Commissioner Barthacor,
Aye.
Commissioner Dahl,
Aye.
and I am an aye as well. So the motion carries 4-1 with Commissioner Braun dissenting. So moving on to our next item, comments from the City Council Liaison.
Well, I'm so pleased to see formal action on this, and I love the deliberation of this commission. This is clearly such a difficult and a complex issue, as you can readily see from the variety of ways in which other cities have addressed it. And I have to say, number one, this is something that I requested 2 city managers ago. I've been waiting a long time to see this. So I'm particularly excited about this proposal coming to City Council in April. It would come, I suspect, at our next meeting, but we will then be considering what you considered at your last special commission, which is the ADU ordinance. So you are definitely, just as we are putting you to work, you are returning the favor. Thank you so much for all of your very thoughtful questions and your hard work on this very difficult and complex issue. I have to say, I am very surprised that so few Southern California cities have enacted a similar ordinance, including the city of Los Angeles, which I think is astounding. But I hope that that we can do justice by way of all of the at City Council at considering all of the important issues that you have raised this evening. And I think they have all been excellent. Thank you so much for your continued dedication, which we continue to count on because you still have a lot ahead of you. Thank you so much.
So thank you. Commissioner Dahl, moving on to the comments from planning commissioners. Commissioner Dahl, do you have any comments this evening?
I just want to thank staff for all the work meeting with Commissioner Padilla and I over the past 6 weeks or even longer, I guess. And all the conversations they've had with other cities and the research that they've done, I think it really paid off. I wish I had a crystal ball to know if 15 or 20% is the right number. And I also know that if we spend another 6 weeks or 6 months, we could probably get it closer to perfection. But I think we need to just move on. And I hope the City Council adopts this ordinance. And on a totally unrelated note, I want to thank staff for not giving us comments from the public late in the day. I was concerned at our January meeting how late some comments came in, and I didn't think we were able to give them the thought process that it requires when they came in so late. So I just hope that I know it's hard during COVID, but I hope we can be stricter with the cutoff. If they don't come in at time, then we don't consider them. I know that's harsh, but I just don't think it's fair to, mostly to the public, but also to the commissioners, to try and have comments dribbling in throughout the day. And that's all. So thank you for not having that today. Thank you.
Thanks, Commissioner Doyle. Commissioner Barthacore.
I also want to thank staff and the commissioners in the subcommittee, as well as kind of the robust discussion that we've been having is very, very helpful. I want to say a couple of things related to the policy, which, you know, maybe was unintended initially, but I think is quite encouraging, is, you know, while we want more on-site actual units to be produced as part of new projects, constructing new affordable housing is the most expensive way of providing affordable housing. I think our current policy actually opens up the window through in lieu fee or some kind of fee program to create additional resources, perhaps for preservation of existing units, which may be an additional parallel track that the city should look at as part of our overall affordability strategy, which is both focused on not displacing existing residents, but also making existing units in our community permanently affordable. To that end, I'm much more supportive of actually, if there is sort of significant amount of funds that roll in through an in lieu fee program, which, you know, we should really think of how we should design it, and that creates those additional resources. I'm much more supportive of actually the city leading that fund as opposed to giving it off to, you know, the regional fund to create affordable housing in places that where we may or may not get the direct benefit of. So I think that is kind of an unintended consequence, which, you know, we should probably look at more positively and think of it as a tool that we can sort of use in the future.
Thank you. I think that's good food for thought once we get through our current agenda and action plan.
We have to adopt this for.
Commissioner Braun, any comment?
Just again, thank you to Commissioners Padilla and Dahl for all your hard work. I know it's a lot of work, so thank you for all your time, and to staff as well. Thank you.
Vice Chair Padilla.
It's like the Oscars. We're all, Liz, Kanika, and Joanna are phenomenal. I just think they must be working every evening and on weekends to do what they're doing. I mean, every iteration Laura and I saw over the last month or two, you could see the progress, and they really pushed us on some issues. So we're very lucky to have them really helping progress planning and development and design in the city. I'm looking forward to reviewing with all of you fellow commissioners a project that will have affordable units included in it as deemed by the ordinance, when and if adopted by City Council. That'll be an exciting day. So thank you. That's it.
So thank you, Vice Chair. Just one comment. I think I just wanted to echo the appreciation of the efforts of the subcommittee and staff, but also, you know, I do think clarity can't be underemphasized. And I find that developers who I've worked with appreciate clear rules and consistency in their application, and, you know, places where you can get through the planning process smoothly. Doesn't mean it doesn't take time, but you can get through it smoothly because you understand the rules and how they're applied, is a boon and will help development in the city. So I do appreciate the clarity of this, and you know, look forward to, like Commissioner Padilla, look forward to seeing some projects with affordable units in them in the future. I'll close my comments there and turn it over to Joanna for comments from staff.
Thank you, Chair and Commissioners. I'm going to speak for Liz. I know that we really appreciate not only the work of the subcommittee, including Commissioner Tom. I hope he's watching tonight because I know he cared about this as well. But also for all of your comments today and in January and in December and in August and all the many times in which we've had these discussions. They've been important to help us, to resolve questions and comments, and that we just really appreciate all of your work. And then to move on to the next item, I just wanted to let people know, to reiterate that we are going to be going to council on March 17th with the ADU ordinance update. So that's really great to be able to take that forward. And then a final comment. I don't know who has been paying attention to SCAG RENA conversation, but just to update you all, on March 4th, SCAG adopted the final RENA allocations, where we all sort of, there are many times that they have finalized the numbers. Now they really are final. And I have a couple statistics. There were 52 appeals filed, representing 49 jurisdictions. 3 of the appeals withdrew. And of the remaining 47 appeals, there were 2 that achieved some partial reductions, and those were Riverside County and Pico Rivera. And that resulted in a redistribution of some of those units. The city of South Pasadena, our final allocation increased by 5 units. So now our RENA allocation is 2,067 for the 6th cycle. So I just wanted to give you that update as well. And those are my final comments from staff. Oh, sorry, Kanika's got her hand. She's got something to say.
Sorry, I just wanted to remind the commission that on March 17th at City Council meeting, Commissioner Braun, our former chair from last year, will be giving a presentation to City Council for Planning Commission accomplishment in 2020.
That's right. Thank you, Kanika, for that reminder. And thank you, Chair Braun, for the year that you did, that you oversaw this body last year. So we appreciate that. And that concludes our comments.
Great, thank you. And with that, I will conclude the meeting and adjourn our regular Planning Commission meeting to the next regular Planning Commission meeting, which has been rare recently, scheduled for Tuesday, April 13th, 2021. So thank you, everyone, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank
Night.
you. Bye.
Thank you.